Hey, welcome back. It is the Jack and Jer podcast show. Memorial Day just happened. It wasn't a beautiful weekend, but today is a beautiful day. It's June 1st. Summer is approaching. It's the unofficial start of summer. Feels like summer, though. Things are open again. Feels like the pandemic never happened, kind of. Mixed feelings on that. I don't know. That's for another day. But today, I am curious. I feel like a lot of times there are bad people. Like overall, most people would say that they're bad people. But sometimes they do good things, or what I think might be a good thing, and then they don't get credit really because they are just known as a bad person. So,
or or like good people will have one slip up, say the wrong thing, right, tweet the wrong thing, maybe in their youth did something, and then we just cast them with this wide net and we just like ignore the 95% of the virtuous things they do because of you know something that culturally now we don't want to encourage, but back then was part of the norm, and whatever.
yeah, so and I guess there's a lot of different circumstances that we'll bring up. So I guess the initial question is why does that happen? Why are people not able to give credit to people when maybe they should get credit, or why are people so quick to put people off when someone has done so much good?
And not only that, I think diving deeper, is it something that we want? Do we want to be blacklisting people, if that's the right word, that are imperfect? For
Right.
instance, anyone before like the 1840s in the U.S., I imagine it was pretty commonplace to have slaves. Now,
Exactly.
we can all be on the same page here that slavery, human trafficking, anything of that sort is morbid. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's one of those things that no civilized person really can debate the negativity of. But with that being said, um, there's schools that are renaming themselves that are named after like George Washington and
Mm-hmm.
other historical people that may have had slaves. And do we want to be rewriting the history books because of something that at one point was commonplace?
Right. Which
Now we have like a different moral hierarchy.
Yeah, I think I've brought it up with you before. Is there's some people who think that eating animals eventually is going to be looked at as morbidly as like slaves, because like we're going to be able to really communicate with animals. We're going to realize that that they're like actual beings, and we're going to be like, how could you ever have killed these things and eaten them? So if that really happened hypothetically in 500, 1,000, 2,000 years, are we going to look back at everyone in the year 2000 and before as horrible people because we were all animal eaters? It makes you think. So I,
And and this is like I think the eating meat thing's very interesting. But this isn't even just like slavery, like
right.
Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, like the Gandhi dude. If you actually like look into some of the things he did, like obviously civil disobedience to was a real mover and shaker and deserves a lot of credit for what he was able to do in India, and like the civil disobedience movement. But with that being said, he would lie naked with his niece, with his like 10, 12-year-old niece,
I didn't
which
know
like
that.
right now would be complete pedophilia.
Right.
Um,
Huh.
but by no means would I say that we shouldn't study and like recognize his contribution to the world, despite him doing some pretty shady shit.
Yeah.
Um,
I need to look into that. That's wild.
yeah, and like we should like listen, put
Oh.
an asterisk on people.
Yeah. Put
You know,
asterisks.
note
Use the
it.
asterisks.
Yeah, note it. But like Mother Teresa, the Mother Teresa, even when Western medicine was widely proven to help cure some things like tuberculosis and like other things that like hit the developing world really hard. She refused to like these orphans that she was watching. She refused to like accept like Western medicine and instead like prayed over them. So like clearly she did some really good things, but like also she did some things that like objectively, in my opinion, you look at it and you're like, I don't think God's going to intervene in the death of this kid when he's got like a very curable disease that if you took these pills would be stopped. So, right. But at the same time, put an asterisk next to it, in my opinion, at least. What do you think? Like, how bad do things need to be to go from asterisks to wiping them off the history books?
Well, this one is tough for me to say because it's like, I don't believe it all the time. I like to think I try and believe it all the time, but it's hard to. But a lot of the things you just said are like pretty objective, and like a lot of times these figures are pretty objectively looked at. But also like everything that we're talking about is pretty subjective, and there's always two sides to everything. And just because 1 billion or 5 billion people think someone is bad, there might be 1 billion who think someone was like good before, during, and after. So like, it's tough to say. I don't know. I like to like think about those people and what their aims are and what they're trying for. So like, someone. I'm not trying to give any what's the word? Not trying to excuse them at all. But I read this in like a book and like it really resonated with me. I was like, oh shit, like I kind of understand their point. Is like Adolf Hitler was doing what he thought was best for him and his people. As horrible as that was, there were people that he thought he was doing the best thing for. And like, it's known as that was a bad thing that he was doing. But there's some people who he thought he was doing the right thing for. And a lot of the time, most of the time, people are doing something that they think is the right thing. As horrible of a thing that like everyone else might think it is, the reason they're doing it is because they think it's the right thing. And there's a lot of time there's a few other people at least that think that what they're doing is the right thing too.
And it's the same thing with Stalin killing millions, tens, if not like, I don't know if it's in the hundreds, but tens of millions of people, sending them to, who knows where, just killing them. Mao Zedong, like in China, Cultural Revolution. Yeah, I think you're right on.
There's some people who still support them, who think like what they did was right, and who are we to say that it wasn't right? Killing shouldn't happen regardless. But when there's two sides at war, it's kind of, for a recent example, like the Gaza, Israel, Palestine thing is like both sides are killing each other. There's no right side when you're killing each other, but both sides are defending themselves. Like they're both doing what they think is right. That we can get further into that another time. But like, who's to say one side is better or right and one side is wrong? It's hard. I'm not the judge.
Yeah, and there's not first thing I want to say is I've been a firm believer for a while that as you said earlier, like these terrible people, they thought they were doing like God's work or the good work. Like bad people don't think that they're bad people normally. Now, right. Some types of criminals and, whatever, but, there's a justification going on in their head the same way that if someone's being held hostage and the police or whoever else comes in, or maybe like a good Samaritan comes in and kills the person that's holding them at gunpoint in like self-defense or, whatever else, it's like, oh, we killed that person to save all these other hostages. Now, if you extrapolate that further and you go into like Hitler, and listen, I'm I'm Jewish. I'm not a fan of Hitler.
No,
Not a fan at all. My bubby, my grandmother, her whole side of the family got wiped out. So like, by all means, what I'm about to say is not you know, don't take it out of context. But extrapolating what I said earlier about like the justification of, oh, you killed this person to save these people. Yeah, there's not a doubt in my mind that Hitler actually thought that Jews and these other undesirable people, like gypsies and people that were handicapped and even homosexuals, that, oh, we had to eliminate them from society because they would poison everyone and blah, blah, blah. And so like I can wrap my mind around the idea that like Hitler thought he was leading the world to a better place. But I also think that we can very clearly say that like, no, that's fucked up. Like what he did, Stalin did, what Matt did. Like
here's a hypothetical. Let's say Hitler discovered the cure for cancer when he was doing what he was doing. Would you be able to give him credit for having done that?
Yeah, I'd be able to give him credit the same way that Warren von Braun, the Nazi German scientist that the U.S. took out of Germany in Operation Paperclip, which was this operation that when
to steal the scientists.
Yeah, steal all the scientists, steal all the smarty pantses, and ignore the fact that they were Nazis and whatever. But yeah, I can credit Warren von Braun for all of his incredible achievements getting us to the moon, while at the same time being like, this guy was a fucking Nazi, yo. Like, let's not completely sweep everything under the rug.
I think that actually, so two things from that is, one, I think it's important to like remove the person from the actions. There's good actions and bad actions. Doesn't, like, the person is just the person, but what they do, you can judge like just the action. And then another thing I think cool, I can't pronounce that guy's name, but I think it's important to like, let's say maybe I don't know too much about that guy either, so he might have done some horrible things. I'm not like this isn't my actual opinion of him, but if he did some good things after World War II, got us to the moon, etc., etc., I think maybe it is good to like give him credit for those things to show other people, hey, just because you're a bad person in the past doesn't mean like your whole life is tarnished. Like, you can do the right thing now, and if you do the right thing now, people will give you credit for it if it's a good thing, like generally speaking.
Yeah, I think there's value in that. Einstein, who I don't think we really need to talk about at length to point out the significance that he had, wrote some pretty racist shit in his journal about Asian people. And I don't think in the textbooks of physics, whatever field he technically contributed to, they should be wiping him out because of it. But, right now we're in such a cultural firestorm that people are getting, I hate to use this word, but deplatformed or fired or canceled or whatever for something they did 5 years ago or whatever. Like, this isn't a personality trait. This isn't like Ellen DeGeneres, who apparently is just like a terrible person to work for and like bullies everyone. It's just like not a, like, this is like, these are just people that like 5 years ago tweeted the wrong thing or, in high school, like said something or whatever. And I don't think we should be like getting them out, like firing them or, preventing them from having like a livelihood. I think if anything, it's a great example to be like, hey, we're human. We're all fallible in our own ways. But like, let's learn from this. That way, like each of us can like try to be better and recognize that like even the greats among us, they slip and fall. Right. And so like, instead of thinking that like only the best people in the world like are 100% right all 100% of the time, recognizing that like, yeah, you're going to trip and stumble. You may say something that you look back and regret. And like, we shouldn't now we're getting to like a blurry area of like, obviously you want to be cautious with what you say. I think in some ways we've made like good strides to recognize, that like we should curtail not speech, like government curtailing speech, but like there's a certain way to like talk about certain issues and things like that to not be offending people.
Right.
But at the same time, do we really want to be like in a society where like one bad tweet is like, or no, I don't even like, maybe not even a bad tweet, but like, you know what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say.
yeah, anything. Just well, it makes me think of, I don't know why I keep on thinking of this, like with this conversation of just like people in certain situations just do basically, like, I don't know how much I believe in free will. I kind of think whatever happens is kind of because of the collective things that have happened to you before, circumstances that make you make like certain decisions. So I guess like the relation of it I see is that um, if you were in that potential circumstance, you, like, anyone would probably have made that decision given that scenario with that background. So like if Ellen DeGeneres, if the soul of Jack was able to switch with the soul of Ellen, and you lived your entire life as Ellen, you would have done the same exact things that she did always. That's kind of what I believe. I don't know if like Jack would have changed anything. I think the circumstances are what defined it. What do you think on that? So that's why I don't give so much. That's basically why I can't give so much hate to someone, because I feel like if I was in their shoes, literally, I would have done the same thing.
So I don't believe in fate in that regard. I believe that there are thousands of realities that exist simultaneously and yet only one at a time. And what I
You're
mean by
sounding as crazy as me right now.
what I mean by that is
That's not lawyer talk.
I mean that I think that every choice you have, from what job you take, what you study, how you interact with someone, did you go up to that guy or girl in the social setting to talk to them, and maybe that leads to your future spouse, whatever it is. I think that every reality is possible, and that you can be that super successful person that does unbelievable feats, but you can also be that completely self-destructive, uh, drug addict, irresponsible, very little self-control, only chasing pleasure instead of like long-term benefits. And I think that you can always change your path, but there is no fate. In a different world, where not in a different world, in a different like dimension, I guess. There's a version of you that would have made a different decision that would have led to a completely dramatic different outcome.
What would have?
Uh,
So you think you make those decisions? You're really making the decision.
I don't believe in fate in the way that you say it. I also think that what you said earlier was interesting, in that because of previous situations and how you acted then, therefore
You make choices because like
yeah. So like
that's
my question
basically
too,
what I'm thinking is like I go into a kitchen right upstairs. There's a an apple and a banana. I'm obviously gonna choose which I'm gonna eat. Let's say I'll choose the banana. So yeah, theoretically I'm choosing, but why did I choose that banana? Because of previous bananas I've eaten, because of apples that I've been eating, because of a feeling that I've felt before, and all of these things from the past that make me say, "Hey, I'm gonna have a banana right now." I don't know if I'm actually choosing the banana or if it's just the result of a bunch of previous things.
well, I don't necessarily know if you can ever spot that, but I will say the more I've gotten into manifestation and visualization, stuff like that, the more things do serendipitously work out like that. Like when I started reading and thinking a lot more about mentors, I ended up getting like messages from people that I wanted to begin like a mentor relationship with. When I was like, trying to visualize like new opportunities as I, was taking my next step in like my professional journey. People were by happenstance being like, oh yeah, like let me introduce you to someone without like me like stepping up. So like I also think, there's like a joke of like a guy's drowning and he's like, God will save me. And then like someone shows up in like a rowboat and he's like, hop in. He's like, no, God will save me. And then like someone else drives by in like a cruise ship and he's like, no, God will save me. And then eventually like he drowns and he gets to like heaven. And he's like, I thought God, you were going to save me. He's like, dude, I sent you a rowboat. I sent you a cruise ship. Like, what do you want me to do? So like part of me also thinks that like, if you look for signs and you believe in like fate, it'll work out that way for better or for worse. Like if you believe your fate is to become super successful and all these things, you're going to work super hard to get there because that's where you think things are going to line up. It's not like you're going to sit on your couch and be like, where's my pile of money? But I also think on the opposite, if you think that you are a victim and that nothing good is going to happen and that your destiny is sealed and that there's no point in trying, then how would you try? Like how would you be able to wake up early every morning to like really put in the work when you think your destiny is sealed? So I know I'm kind of like putting one foot in each camp, but yeah, I don't think it's true fate the way that you say it. I think it's more mindset.
No, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's tough to think about or to like explain exactly what I think. I don't even really know. It's a fun thing to explore, I guess.
But like, so going back to like the bad people that we were talking about, or good people that do bad things, there's a story about Adolf Hitler in World War I, who got like lost in the trenches in like no man's land and got within like 30 feet of the British or French's lines. I don't know which group. And normally enemy soldiers would be shot on sight during World War I like that. And for some reason, this guy like wrote in his journal, he's like, I don't know, I couldn't shoot him. I just like couldn't shoot him.
That's wild.
And Adolf like was able to get free. And obviously we know how the rest of the story works out. But like, was that fate? Like, or like who knows?
That reminds me of this will be my like did you know of the week. I'll do it a little early, even though we're kind of getting towards the end. But what's it called? In Vienna, 1918, I believe, Stalin lived, Hitler lived, this like dictator of like Vietnam, damn, I'm gonna look it up real quick, and Einstein and like one other person, and they all might have gone to the same like coffee shop, and it's like what was happening 1913, Trotsky, Tito, Freud, Stalin, Hitler all lived in Vienna. So it's like what was going on in Vienna? And then I think 2 or 3 of them most likely frequented the same coffee shop, where it's like I always think like, not always, I've thought before, if that coffee shop like had an explosion one day and 3 of those guys died, would the world have been a different place, or would the similar events have happened just with different figureheads? Like, I don't know. It's wild to think. Did those 3 people really, 5 people, change the trajectory of the world that much, or were they just in the place to do it? And
were they pawns carrying out a greater fate, or were they the actual actors that changed the world? I don't know.
Yeah, which is related to like good people and bad people doing good things and bad things, because I don't know who determines if it's good or bad. Depends on which side they're on and the time, because things change over time and all of that. I don't know.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say, as we're kind of wrapping up, is I think it is important to know, as our morals evolve, that we did things in the past that should be condemned, but condemning like ideas versus people are very different.
Good point.
We shouldn't, in my opinion, judge people using today's moral norms. Because like you said with the meat thing, like if we look back as meat being this barbaric behavior, or maybe we'll look back and like having more than two children will be considered this barbaric behavior because of like population growth or whatever it is. I don't think it's fair to look back on it. Like if you were born in Germany and you weren't Jewish, or any of these other groups of people that Nazis didn't like, you were born there in the 30s or 20s or whatever.
You'd be doing the same thing.
When Nazis got into power, you became like a Nazi. Like you like the Nazi youth, like the Pope. I don't know if it's this current Pope or the previous one, but he was part of the Nazi youth. Like, do I think the Pope is a bad person because he was born in a circumstance where everyone had to do a certain thing? Not like, no.
Right. If he's still a Nazi, that's a different thing.
Yeah, if you're still a fucking Nazi, then
that's not good. There's plenty of them.
Yeah, for sure. But I still think we should talk to them. We shouldn't just like round them up, kill them, or punch them in the face, as some people say. Like, no, like we have to evolve. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. I just think there's such a Puritan revolution, for lack of better words, that like we need to resist. Like it's okay to acknowledge that someone who did really good things also did something that was, bad. And, bad things, like, for instance, Donald Trump. I know like, a lot of people are going to say really bad person, blah, blah, blah. But like, you can also say like him and his administration did, I'm not going to say it was a lot of things or most things.
At least a few good things.
He did at least a few good things. Like,
yeah. And even there's things even far lefters, if they didn't know it was Trump, they'd say it was a good thing. But they like, I forget what it was, but there was something that he did that like they literally praised, and then they found out that he did it, and then they bashed it, and it was like literally changed the sentiment of it just by knowing that he did it. It's like that's ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah. So for instance, Trump was the first president to guarantee like a massive level of funding for HBCUs. So historically black, I think it's community university or colleges, universities. And before then, I think they had to lobby each year to government for their funding. And he was the first president to guarantee it to that they would have their funding and they wouldn't have to continue to lobby. And so like, you can say whatever you want to say, but like, if you believe in supporting those types of institutions, which like I believe in, I think there's a good role that those institutions play. Then I think you can also credit him for doing something like that, even if you think everything else he did was bad, even if you think the tax cut was a major ploy for his, for corporate greed, even if you think somehow that the peace deals that his administration did in the Middle East was, I don't know, bad, which I don't understand how any peace deal would be viewed. But like, even if you thought
there's plenty of people who do.
It blows my mind. But even if you thought everything else was bad, I still think you can point to a few good things. The way that I'm not a big fan of the Biden administration right now. I don't think they're handling things well. But I still think that it's nice to have a more perhaps civil presidential person in office. But like I can do this with everyone. I don't even know if it's a skill. It just, at the end of the day, it just frustrates me when I meet people that say things like, I have no idea how, or I can't think of one reason how Trump beat Hillary, or there's no reason to do this. I'm like, there may be no good reasons, but like, you can clearly be smart enough to think of reasons. And like, I just like, I feel like it's just intellectually dishonest when people are like blacking out a whole group of things without giving any type of credence or respect, like just acknowledgement to like some of the things that are more nuanced.
I believe it's cognitive dissonance. Is that a term for it? Maybe.
I think I think cognitive dissonance is more of you're a smoker and like the smoking ads come out and you just are like, oh yeah, that's baloney or made up or I think that's closer to cognitive dissonance. I don't know if
Yeah,
there's
that term confused me. I gotta look into that. Um, well, what's called? I kind of shared my fact. I think that that wasn't exactly what I was gonna say, but I think it's super cool that 1913 had that those 5 people living there. And we're about out of time. I don't want to talk too much more. You have anything you'd like to share?
I God, I'm gonna butch this number, but I recently learned that despite what we think, and I actually shared this podcast with you, despite what we think, the amount of trees being planted, or the amount of trees like in the, I guess planted might be the right word, is actually a huge net positive. It's like 30% growth, like trees. I know we talk about like, and obviously there's a huge difference between like cutting down the Amazon and like that versus just like planting trees in, you know, Philly, which is where we are, like different trees, biodiversity, whatever. But it was super interesting to like actually learn that because I had like a conception that we were just cutting everything down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. That actually reminds me of I am gonna share a different fact because I read this earlier and I feel like it's kind of related. I do believe global warming, and I do believe like we need to save the earth. Like I think even if people don't believe in global warming 100%, like we're definitely killing animals and destroying habitats, and I'm not really a fan of that. But I do believe in global warming. Also, I do realize that there's a good amount of evidence that like discounts some stuff or says like it's inconclusive and all of that, which also worries me a bit because how much we weren't all team players for COVID makes me realize like we're not going to be team players for global warming if that ever happens. Doesn't seem like it will, but a couple quick facts. Pluto's atmospheric system has completely collapsed in less than 3 years. Neptune's storm systems are reversing direction. Saturn got a new observable atmospheric band. Jupiter has a new red spot. Mars ice caps have completely melted and are heating up. Venus's cloud top wind speeds have increased 33%. So basically saying that like all of the planets have some type of atmospheric phenomena like happening is I think an interesting thing to note.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a shot in the dark here and say that you're saying not our greenhouse gas emissions are affecting these other.
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah. But
I will.
Sorry, go ahead.
I will say when it goes to global warming, climate change, I do think we're really dropping the ball, not on the obvious of like emissions and things like that. I think we're dropping the ball in terms of plastics.
Mm-hmm.
I think that regardless of if you think climate change, global warming is a man-made versus a natural, if it even can be stopped, especially when you look at like the big polluters really are India, China, developing countries. US really isn't, behind the steering wheel. I think we can all agree, regardless of the actual emissions thing, we gotta bring in our use of plastics. They're finding them everywhere. They're finding in the ocean, in the foods we're eating, in the air. They're finding it in rainfall or snowfall. On Everest, it's everywhere. It's clearly not good for us to be ingesting these things. Like it's not debatable that like the fish has a bunch of them in their body, like they die and they break down. So like we clearly don't want them in our system. But I will say, regardless of the climate change, global warming thing, I think we really got to rein in our plastic, single-use plastic thing. That maybe the climate's going to go absolutely berserk in the next 20 years, but our ecosystems could completely get disrupted if we just keep pumping the earth with plastics and things like that.
Agreed. Maybe that is something we talk about next week or on a future episode. Thanks for listening. I enjoyed that conversation. As always, June 1st, beautiful day. I'm going to go catch the sunset or the last few hours. And Jack, I will see you soon. Thank you, everyone. Like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you like. Let us know what we should change. And let us know if you want to be a guest.